November was a wild ride for our portfolio. We smashed an all-time high back in the October update, only to drop by over $75,000 in the next 3 weeks. But then last week, we climbed by more than $50,000, putting us right back within sniffing distance of a new portfolio record. And of course, all this volatility had to take place during a major strategic shift in our portfolio. I went from pure accumulation for well over a decade to a hybrid approach that helps pay the bills now while I continue not working a regular job. But this month has a new theme. It's time to stabilize our cash position while fully embracing this new world. I want to settle back into my favorite investing rhythm: boring, steady, and predictable. In this video, I'll walk you through the battle plan that lets me peacefully transition into the next stage of life. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name's Jeff Teeples, and here we aim to grow your wealth with simple, time-tested solutions. If you get value from these videos, tap that like button and consider joining the channel membership. Your support keeps the content flowing. You know what time it is. Let's grow. November Insights. If you've been around this channel for a while, you've probably heard me talk about the power of target allocations more times than you can count. I'm a huge believer in simply dollar cost averaging into your targets every single Monday. It's one of the most underrated systems in personal finance. I always laugh a little when people try to time the green days and the red days, especially when they're investing in broad ETFs. Because if you stick to your target allocations, it's mathematically impossible not to buy the comparative dip. You don't need instincts, you need a system. When the market went up, my cash allocation naturally drifted down. And when the market dropped, I deployed my Monday DCA plus the surplus cash straight into whatever was my most beat up position. But lately, life has smacked me around a little bit. Bills, shifting accounts, and the long-term capital gains from restructuring the portfolio have put a strain on our cash, bringing it all the way down to about 4%. This month, I'm making a small but important change to the portfolio. I'm setting the new cash target allocation at 5%. I'm comfortable with that number because our monthly cash flow has increased enough to support it. And mentally, 5% feels like the right blend of opportunity and stability for where we are in life. My goal for 2026 is simple: let the cash bucket hum on autopilot again while we continue building our long-term core positions in the background. Let's get into all that now. Portfolio overview. All right, let's jump to the portfolio and check out the spreadsheet that brings it all together. This is my command center. Every account and ETF and dollar of cash flow all in one place. If you want to use this tool that I made, it's completely free. The link is in the description below. Feel free to do a save as and customize it to your own goals. And before we hit up that spreadsheet, as we always do, I'm starting out here on E-Trade, which is where most of our investments are held. This all brokerage and bank accounts includes my 3 former 401ks that have been rolled over into an IRA, my wife and my Roth IRAs, my nephew's Roth IRA, we'll get into that soon. He did turn 18, so I'm going to give him the boot and get him started on his own. And then our taxable account. And I've been talking about this the last couple videos since all of the changes. SCHD and VGT are all in the IRA, whereas QQQI and now, and we'll get into this, BTCI are in the taxable accounts. And then this is the nephew's in his own Roth. And I think you probably believe me, but just to prove it, let me pull up my taxable account. You can see here, we have the taxable account opened up, and it is all of the QQQI and BTCI. And the other 2, technically 3 with the nephews, holdings are all in retirement accounts. Now, going back to this, SCHD remains unchanged. I did reinvest the dividends, which is why we have the weird number here, but we have 15,049 shares at a price paid of $26.39. We've really made a lot more money with SCHD over the years. We've moved this entire position twice now at a value of $415,200. And then the QQQI, that's our main cash flowing friend. And we made this change a couple months back, and I've explained that one too many times in detail. You're probably tired of it by now. We have 5,650 shares at a price paid, which doesn't really matter here, of $54.68. And the total value is $307,500. And then VGT, I've had this one for a very long time. Our price paid is that juicy 228. That's what happens when I don't move it around from account to account over the years. And we're holding on to 300 shares, and it's worth $225,660. Now here's the new kid on the block. To save you time and pain, I made an entire video about this change. So check out last week's video if you want to know in detail why I went from IBIT to BTCI. I will summarize it very briefly here. Because I'm in retirement now, hence all these changes that I've explained over the last couple of videos, and you can go watch the old ones. I don't want to rehash everything every time. I was ready to be done with Bitcoin, so I got rid of IBIT on November 12th, and I was going to roll it all into QQQI for more future cash flow, but I did decide to keep the Bitcoin exposure while automatically taking the profit as well, and I did so with BTCI. It functions very similarly to QQQI and the NASDAQ index, QQQM. This is the same concept here. The BTCI is in the same family of NEOS funds, and it's essentially IBIT, so holding Bitcoin outright with a spot Bitcoin ETF, but it caps the ceiling with those strike prices of the options and raises the floor with the guaranteed income from the premiums, especially when the strike price doesn't hit. So it is the exact same concept of QQQI, but it's underlying index Bitcoin I do not believe in long term, and I explained that in the other video, but I do think there's going to be lots of opportunities in the meantime. So I wanted to keep my skin in the game, but be 1 foot in, 1 foot out type thing. I'm not a hodl forever, because if Bitcoin eventually goes the crazy ups and downs and up and downs and hodl, stay the course, and it gets up to 500,000 plus per coin, that's great. But if the end of its road is zero or close to, your total profit is $0.00 if you were a hodl forever guy. And I go into more detail in the other video, so please check that out. But this is a position I do not plan to reinvest. I'll take these dividends and put it into cash and other things, QQQI namely, over the years. And that's worth, it's dropped a lot, 46,190. But believe it or not, this holding, as it should, has outperformed IBIT. I just sold when it was at 103 Bitcoin, and now it's down to like just below 90K. This has been less of a loss than just holding Bitcoin would have been. And I show that in the other video with the reasons. Okay, so all these assets here in E-Trade. And one more time, this bottom one here, this S&P 500 fund is the nephew's. It will be gone, I think, next video. I'm going to work on that next week maybe, with him being 18 now. But all of the assets, including his, and I needed him, are worth $1,003,652. And our unrealized gain is not nearly as sexy as it used to be. I shuffled stuff around. This used to be a way bigger number. It's down to a measly $168,000. Again, this does not include the dividend though. So QQQI and BTCI will always look terrible on paper because it's unrealized gains only. But yeah, still looking pretty healthy here. Now it's time to check out Seeking Alpha. And here it is. And you can see that this first section is ETFs. And this will just be a repeat of all the E-Trade stuff. We won't rehash it, but there is one new player. Within the ETF section, I also have VUG. And VUG is the wife's health savings account, HSA, and we've accumulated nearly 100 shares at an average cost of $295. That's really good considering it's almost worth $500 now, for a total of $48,934. We'll take it. And I'll just collapse this one. I keep ETFs separate from VU so I can see how I'm doing. You can see I whooped it that day. Clearly I'm the next Warren Buffett. And VU I keep on its own. And what this one is here is the wife's 401k. I too had a lot of my 401ks in VU back in my day. But you can see that she has 866 shares of VU at an average cost of $421, which isn't bad because we only started this in 2022. She actually had a diversified mix before that within her Boeing portfolio that we had made, but we decided just to roll with VU for a total value of $544,400. That is our largest holding, and I love that because it's the market. And then the HODL factory, we don't go into depth. This is my 20 individual stocks that I aim to crush the market with, and you can see I just obliterated the market on Friday. Oh, and I'm recording this on November 30th. As always, the market is closed. It's a Sunday, so all the numbers are consistent. You see the HODL Factory has $31,485. And then cash equivalents. I now hold cash and cash equivalents entirely at JP Morgan Chase, where we do our checking. It just makes things a lot easier. Is at $68,471. And I really want to get that one up. And we'll get into that later at the target allocations. And now it is time for the portfolio tracking spreadsheet that I use. And this first tab is really the only manual entry on this thing. I plugged in the dollar value as of close of business on Friday, as I do every week, to get a total portfolio value, which matches what you just saw in Seeking Alpha, $1,687,802. And the first pivot table that it rolls up to is our portfolio allocations. So over on the left here, I have them by position. You can see that VU is our largest position, and it's 32% of our portfolio. SCHD, our only value holding, comes in at 24.6. And we have our primary cash flow position of QQQI here at $307,000. And then our growth ETFs are now VGT and VUG, which is the best available position in the HSA. Otherwise, I'd probably just roll with VGT, honestly. But it's a good one too, at $225,000. And then our cash here is lagging a little at 4.1% at $68,000. And the HODL factor is up to 1.9, which I like to see. And now by type over here, the cornerstone is VU. Value is all SCHD. The two growths roll up into growth. That's VGT and VUG. Cash flow, I keep separate with QQQI because I believe in the NASDAQ 100 index being stable. Whereas I still count this high risk cash flow or BTCI as Bitcoin. It's my Bitcoin exposure. And it's at 2.7%. I don't mind that. Again, HODL Factory just under 2%. And I must self-report, this cash isn't all liquid. It is cash, but I'm technically exaggerating it. It isn't all SGov. I'm not going to show you my exact cash situation. I have stuff different places, but there's a couple little nuanced loans I have to people and things like that. So really my cash is even lower than 4.1. And I want to get my legitimate cash position up to 5% this year, which I think is about $85,000 if I'm at 1.7. Okay, now this tab is fun and it's the snapshots. And I'll tell you that my last portfolio update in October was 1.711 million. That's still my all-time high. You can see it's the last highlighted one. I highlight the all-time highs as we go. And things got a little bleak. We lost $76,000 in the 3 weeks after our all-time high, but then we climbed a nice 53 grand last week. The market was kind to me. It knew I was going to drop this video and it couldn't expose me for being that bad of an investor. So it hooked me up with the 52 Gs. But you see, we're right there sniffing our all-time high, and I have no doubt that we'll eventually hit it if we stay the course. And then one of my favorite ones to just take a deep breath is the portfolio value by month. And I do weekly updates, but this takes the average monthly value. And you can see with the purple bar being 2025, we're not quite at an all-time high. It looks like last month was a little better at 1.683, but our average update's 1.667. Not too shabby. And you can see that's up from 1.542 the year before. And well, we have a nice little stairway here. And even if these bars drop and we stay the course and don't panic sell, just keep pumping into the system, it's going to raise inevitably over the years and decades. Just stay the course. This is a thing to look at, to smile and think, oh, real time, it never feels like anything happens. But when I zoom out, we're making moves, baby. And then, of course, my last and favorite tab is the projections tab. I assume an 8% nominal return, which is 2% lower than the historical averages. And again, I account for inflation in a separate module. If you want to account for inflation here, which I don't recommend, because then you'll have mixed data depending on what you're looking at, I recommend doing it separately and more dynamically. But either way, you can plug in your real return or your nominal return percentage. I choose nominal. And this over here is a breakdown of what we put in. The 401k plus a ridiculous match, the HSA and the HODL Factory. I do 100 a week, and so it ends up being 433 a month. So that's about $4,000 invested each month. And then with these assumptions, this is our value that we'll have at certain years, not age. I'm not 0 years old. I guess we're using years in this case. But my favorite part of this is the retirement calculator I built in. If our goal is $3 million before the wife fully retires, which it is, spoiler alert, then it looks like we have a projected 3.7 years left of work. Now, this 3.9 and the 16.96 CAGR is what's actually happened, zero assumptions. It uses the spreadsheet values and it pulls them forward. Now, this 3.7 years is assuming that the next 3.7 years goes like the last 3.9. So it's a big assumption, and this thing updates real time. If we crash, this will turn to 4.3. So I love it. Right now, in the current conditions, if things continue, it would be August, basically, of 2029, where she could say, peace. We have had some strange weather patterns for this time of year. It has been pouring dividends. Dividends received. This is usually the part of the video where I report the slight year-over-year increase. Not this time. This month absolutely shattered our previous November record, and it wasn't even close. Let me just show you. Here's our dividend table by month, and you can see that I have a major bag alert to announce. In November, we received $4,963 of dividends, and that compares to last November's $1,054. Now, clearly, we've changed the composition of our portfolio, so we can't get too excited, but still, we're pretty excited. Let's check it out. So last year we had some JEPI, JEPQ, that's gone. We had VMFXX, that's interestingly gone. I had it for so long. And then the HSAs, we have a little more emphasis on this year. QQQI is new kid on the block, and clearly at 3,600, it was a big chunk in November. And then the HODL factory, I'm happy to say it has tripled from $10 to $30. Love to see that for a November increase. BTCI, I did get in time for the dividend. It was a very small one, which was disappointing. It only paid about $1.01 if memory serves per share, and it's usually like $125 to $150 in that range. So of course, right when I jump in, but the price was way down and it's inevitable. And again, it did outperform Bitcoin. You can look it up from when the price drops. That's just how these covered call ETFs work. Strike prices weren't met and we got that guaranteed income. So it is a good thing within a Bitcoin disaster. SPYI, so I must confess, I have a little slice of this over in Chase in my cash. I have a little bit of greedy cash there, but it's mainly SGov and HSAs that I hold cash in. So I'm not that bad of a boy, but we do have a bit for $29. And then SGov itself gave us $123 on my first official dividend. I did go from VMFXX to SGov over in Chase, so I have instant access to my cash. Just bada bing, bada boom, it's in my checking. I was tired of waiting, frankly. But I will say the wait on the QQQI each month doesn't really bother me too much from E-Trade. In fact, it's pending as I make this video to get to my checking account. Okay, and if we collapse November and zoom out, we're sitting at $42,118 so far in 2025, and that's already exceeding the $35,000 from last year. And we still have one more, hopefully juicy month left with SCHD, and then less so VGT and VUG and that kind of stuff. And then of course our new NEOS funds. So I wouldn't be shocked to see an all-time high in this quarter. And it looks like, I'm just looking, I might be missing something here. September was an all-time high. Yep, before that. So I think we can break the 7,200, but frankly, I'm lazy and I haven't done the math, so I have no proof. Just trust me, bro. Okay, cool, but where do we go from here? Closing thoughts. Truth be told, I've been all over the map since leaving my job to start this channel back in mid-2023. Passively managed low-cost ETFs with strict target allocations was so easy when our needs were simple. But once our life shifted, our portfolio had to shift with it. The good news is I'm finally feeling positive vibes again. I'm genuinely excited to get this portfolio reestablished for the long haul. And getting our cash back up after all these portfolio moves and after our holiday shopping spree will be a critical step in that journey. And speaking of critical wonders, a huge shout out to you 29 amazing channel members. You're starting to feel like my version of the 300. No newcomers, but no one leaves either. This is my S-tier squad right here, and I really do appreciate you. Your support really does help me pump out these videos with this small channel and frankly falling revenue. It means a lot. And one more quick shout out to my Seeking Alpha and Snowball Analytics link, my two favorite investing tools by far and away. Try them out for free. I think Seeking Alpha is even still on the Black Friday sale. But worst case scenario, cancel it. Best case scenario, you love it, you save money, and you support the channel. And finally, check out one of these 2 videos to continue down your path towards financial freedom. Remember, money is overrated. Freedom is not. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Weird. Peace.